I'm sure you've already considered the possibility that this isn't a coincidence. Of course. You know I'm going to have to report this. Indira's mouth twisted. Maybe you could wait? Wait? You know who I am to them. Just give me a few days to consider the legal angle. The doctor was silent a moment, lips tight. Next week, Indira. I'm going to report this by Monday. Good enough. The restaurant was loud and dim and made the best noodles in town. Cian hailed her from across the room. Indira waved back, weaving her way through the tables to join her in the tiny booth crammed into the corner. Whoa, look at you. You're a walking painting. Cian stood to share a brief, tight hug before sliding back into her seat. She was a longtime friend with sometimes benefits, and their Wednesday nights were a long-standing tradition. Indira had picked a black sleeveless dress with a thin, wavy line of green up one side, leaving her tattoo visible. She found she was choosing her clothing to match it these days, an impulse she didn't quite understand considering what it had already done to her and was possibly doing to her now. It was nice to look at, though. Tahari had turned her into an art, and it wasn't the artist's fault that the paint had been tainted. She smiled, holding out her arm at Cian's prompting so that she could turn it this way and that in the light. Seriously cool. How's it working? On my allergy? Well enough, she answered carefully, avoiding her friend's eyes as she squeezed into her side of the booth. It heads reactions off at the pass, and it's hypnotic to watch. They were regulars at the restaurant, on first-name terms with the chef and owner, a slight Japanese man who looked to be in his early 60s, but who was rumored to have started the restaurant himself over a century ago. They didn't have to order, he would make them something special that wasn't on the menu. Once Indira was settled in, the chef's daughter brought them 2 glazed cups, exchanging tea for pleasantries and leaving the teapot for them in the center of the table. When Cian chattered about work and local news, Indira inched her skirt up and dabbed the corner of her napkin to the bandage just below her knee. When she brought the napkin back up, she could see it stained with a dark spot in the dim light. She shivered. She'd shaved more than 12 hours ago, but the little cut where she'd nicked herself with a razor still hadn't clotted. Slowly, under the table, she pulled a new bandage from her handbag and applied it to her leg, then sealed the overflowing one in a plastic bag and sanitized her hands. She barely heard a word Cian said over the panic pounding in her ears, but she forced herself to breathe, slowly, smile, and nod. Clotting factors, her 3rd case against Anna and Perez. Cian, she said quietly, closing her purse and bringing both hands above the table to cradle the warmth of her teacup. Something's wrong. Her friend glanced around the crowded restaurant. What is it? The med tat is handling that perfume allergy, but it's got a couple of hidden bonuses added in. She frowned. Indy? She laid it out for her. The chocolate, the rashes and muscle soreness, the diagnosis, and now the bleeding. Cian's frown only deepened as she listened. Do you need to go to the emergency room? Her heart stuttered at the phrase. She'd had enough of hospitals for a lifetime. No, not yet. Cian gave her a long look. It's just a small cut, I promise. I'm going back to my own doctor tomorrow. The other woman's mouth pinched, but she gave a short nod. All right. So what's the likelihood that GMP knew you were signed up for the tattoo? She asked. As individuals? They shouldn't have known at all. Not before, with enough time to tamper with my tattoo. That's a patient confidentiality issue. I prosecuted a case against them for that. Oh, that thing with the senator? She nodded. But they sent me flowers, so they definitely know now. I also ran into Heather Gannon's personal assistant in the pharmacy queue yesterday after my appointment. I wasn't trying to hide my arm from her, but they shouldn't have known ahead of time. Yeah, but that doesn't mean they didn't, Cian scowled. Okay, so then, what's the likelihood that they're trying to get revenge? Indira frowned. Low. They're not stupid. Why would they have done this deliberately? This is their chance to get my sympathy or public trust, or maybe I'd drop out due to conflict of interest. Or maybe they'd start a new ad campaign. Even Indira Chang has one. But why would they be hurting me instead of using me? They'd have to think I'd be high profile about it if my tattoo was faulty. You wouldn't go to the media though, but they can't know that. Her friend gave her a wry look, dropping her gaze to the cup in her hands as if looking for answers in it. Maybe they want you to cry wolf and discredit yourself? If you turn up with a boatload of symptoms unrelated to what your tattoo's even for, and you go public and it's disbelieved. She shrugged. No, that doesn't make sense either. Your doctor has records, right? Yes, I considered that. There's no way it would work. And look how it's happening. It's too obvious. These complications are popping up rapid fire in the same order as the cases I prosecuted against them. There's no way these conditions in this order can be random. But why? It's like they're jumping up and down, shouting at you that they're doing something incredibly illegal and unethical and easy to prove against them. Why? Indira sighed, an angry breath hissing out between her lips. I don't know yet, but I will. I'll skip ahead a little bit because I'm running out of time. All right, so she's gone to the hospital. Indira was out of surgery and sitting up in bed when Heather Gannon appeared from around the corner and rapped 3 times on the frame of the open door. Impeccable as ever in an ice blue suit with a white collar, she walked in with a modest bouquet of flowers and a card. She set the flowers on the end of Indira's bed. They rested awkwardly against her foot. I want you to know I am sorry, Miss Chang, she said. Indira frowned at her. For what? Heather hesitated. It was the first time Indira had ever seen her look uncomfortable or uncertain. Have you ever been angry at someone and pinned their photograph to a dartboard or written an angry letter you knew you would never send? What are you talking about? Indira whispered. Even through the lingering haze of sedatives and pain medications, she was afraid she knew. When you won those cases against us, I was angry. We filed those clients' patients' serum away so they could never be used again, and not out of real personal malice, you have to understand. I keyed them to your name, just to relieve the anger. The unflappable calm Indira had always admired and hated about the woman was tainted with a restless agitation that made it hard to see Heather Gannon in this woman at her bedside. Wait, you were mad at me, so what? You put my name on defective vials for spite? Fear fluttered behind Indira's haze of medication and disbelief. Heather's voice was crisp and clinical, and it trembled. She didn't meet Indira's eyes. No one ever thought you would get a med tat, and when you did, well, the system's automated. It pulled everything with your name on it, and before I even knew you'd come to us. I knew you wouldn't believe me, but I didn't do this on purpose. If I'd known this could happen, if I'd had any inkling, I'd have deleted it at once. Why are you telling me this? Indira rasped, her voice thin with horror. You think I won't go after you for this? Heather shook her head with a sad sigh. I'm sure you would. Then Indira's throat started to itch, and the familiar shot of adrenaline hit her bloodstream like a kick in the head. Her heart thundered in her chest, her vision going red around the edges. Pain lanced through her head. She lifted a shaking hand to her nose, and blood dripped into her palm, another droplet trickling down her lip. Clumsy with panic and too much adrenaline, she grasped for the call button to summon help, but a second rush hit and overwhelmed her. The adrenaline feedback loop. Of course. And Indira realized that Heather knew it too. She programmed it herself into a tattoo she never expected Indira to get. Hit after hit of epinephrine flooded her system without regulation. She gasped for air in great big gulps that weren't enough. Her monitors started beeping intensely. Pulse and BP were erratic. She couldn't catch her breath. I'm sorry, Miss Chang, really I am. She took Indira's hand, and Indira was too weak to pull away. Disoriented, she thought she caught a whiff of flowers at the end of the bed, or perfume. I heard you'd gotten a tattoo, Heather continued, speaking a bit more quickly as if she was trying to get her confession out before it was too late. And I was frightened. I sent flowers. I arranged to have others keep an eye on you, to tell myself it had all gone okay, but I realized quickly enough that it hadn't. I wanted to warn you earlier, but Lucy wouldn't let me. It's our company, you see. We started it together while we were still in med school, before we were married even. It's us. It would kill her to see it brought down. Indira lifted her head, studying Heather Gannon through blurred, pounding vision. Instead of ringing the call button for help or asking what she could do for Indira, Heather's priority was the unburdening of her own soul. It more than canceled out any sympathy Indira might have otherwise tried to summon for her. The world was going soft around the edges, the sounds muted and far away. Indira was vaguely aware of an ache in her chest and barely noticed when her telemetry monitor started beeping wildly. Heather straightened, brushing the wrinkles out of her skirt with a last long look at Indira that might have been compassion or pity. Help, someone! She called into the corridor with believable panic in her voice. The echo of her heels clicking down the hall receded in perfect meter with Indira's too rapid heartbeat until neither could be heard anymore.